Coming at you, another edition of Beef Up Front. A lot to discuss in the world of college football as we are inching closer to kickoff, with plenty to discuss at this point in time of the season. No better person to tackle it all with than Ryan Beef Coyle. I am Sean Brace. This is Beef Up Front. Right now, Beef, as we are recording this / live on my television screen, I'm watching a replay of Texas and Georgia. Georgia currently up 20-0 with about 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter here, or second quarter. This is just a fantastic watch. Be able to tune in and catch this game. Again, this is when Texas was 6-0, Georgia was 5-1, and Arch Manning in the pocket getting just demolished. And, look, we were just talking a ton last week about the SEC. Today we're going to talk some Big Ten, but still fun to watch nonetheless.
Yeah, this morning, or not even this morning, this past few hours, we've had YouTube on downstairs, and we just watched Auburn, Alabama, Iron Bowl from Cam Newton's season. We watched that. We had the 100. We had an hour.
That's
worth
a classic. They were down. They were down big in that one.
Yeah, 24-0. So
Cam was special.
We had that football itch today.
Yeah, Cam was special, and I know he's catching some heat because of everything he's saying about Jalen Hurts. But at the end of the day, man, it's all about getting clicks, and that's all that matters. But there's no doubt about it. Cam was a badass quarterback for Auburn. All right, as I said, all things front and center, Big Ten, Big Ten, Big Ten. Last year, top to bottom, end of the season, playoff domination, national champion, the best conference in college football, the Big Ten. As we roll in right now, I know we discussed it last week in the SEC. Your thoughts, is this a better conference this year, top to bottom? Is it more top-heavy this year? Do you feel like the national champion is going to come out of the Big Ten yet again? Your thoughts?
I think top to bottom, the SEC is better. It is going to be superior this year. I think Michigan kind of has to get back into that national title mix to probably have that title of the best conference in college football. But I do think there's three legit teams that have legit chances at winning the national title out of the Big Ten with Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State. Do I think it's going to be any of those? As of this moment, I'm probably leaning more so towards the SEC. Either like a Texas or a Georgia probably would be my pick sitting here on July 20th. Still haven't made my official selection yet. But I would still put the SEC, I think, above the Big Ten. It's just we got some question marks with what Ohio State's going to look like at the quarterback spot. Oregon lost a ton. They're ushering in a new quarterback. Penn State is the big dog, I think, this year with, experience-wise and everyone returning for them. And then Michigan is a question mark. That offense was so bad last year. How good can Bryce Underwood be to kind of bring these guys up?
Yeah, we're going to get into Penn State. There's going to be a lot to discuss when it comes to the Nittany Lions. And I just want to know, though, from your standpoint, when you said top to bottom, is there one team that doesn't get enough attention right now in your mind as far as the Big Ten is concerned? Is it Illinois, who ended the season on a run last year with 4 straight victories? Is there a team that maybe we're not discussing? Is there a team that could have came over from the Pac-12 as far as that, not mentioning Oregon there? Is there somebody at the bottom or another team like Wisconsin that's a little bit of a sleeper instead of focusing on Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and maybe we could throw Michigan into the mix as well, as you just pointed out? Is there another team that could play the role of spoiler and potentially to watch out for?
Iowa, maybe. I think, you roll out of bed and Iowa's got 9 or 10 wins, it seems like, every year without an offense. They brought in the top FCS transfer, Mark Gronkowski, I believe his name is, from South Dakota State to play quarterback. So they actually have some juice this year at the quarterback position. And like I said, they roll out of bed and win 9-10 games every season without an offense. Now I think they're actually going to have some juice and some sparks on that side of the ball with Gronkowski. Let's see how he transitions from the FCS to the FBS, but they're sitting in there at 40-1 to win the Big Ten. I don't think that they're going to win it, but if you're making me take a long shot, a team maybe that's flying a little bit under the radar, I'd probably go with Iowa there.
All right. And then, like I said, from the Pac-12 crossover, you got teams like USC in the mix. You got teams like Washington in the mix here. Of course, UCLA, as I just brought up there, but also into this conversation, I'll throw Nebraska in this question as well. One of those teams, is there a team out of those 4 or 5 teams that I just mentioned to you that could potentially be in the mix? A team that, will be on the schedule for one of these top dogs that could potentially knock them off, and maybe the expectations should be a little bit higher.
I would put Nebraska kind of in that mix. I think that they could make a run year 2 with Dylan Raiola. We saw in flashes how good he could be last year at times. Now he played in his entire freshman season in the Big Ten. That experience is without a doubt going to carry over. I'll give Matt Rule the benefit of the doubt in terms of being able to build programs and believing in them that they're going to get Nebraska back. So Nebraska sitting there at 40-1 as well. I think is another team I'm not saying is going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if we look up at the end of the season and they're 9-3. An experienced head coach and Rule, a quarterback returning for his second year. They've had great defense over the past few years. They just got to find a way to win these close games. That's where they've really struggled. But the Cornhuskers, I think, are in for a potential 9-win season this year.
All right, let's get right into some of the team breakdowns here. And again, DraftKings Sportsbook, looking at some of the numbers here. As far as conference winner is concerned, Big Ten odds here: Ohio State to win it all, plus 195, Penn State plus 250, Oregon 3-1, Michigan plus 850, USC 25-1, Illinois 30-1, Indiana 35-1, Nebraska 40-1, Iowa 40-1, Washington 60-1, Minnesota 100, and we'll leave it on there. Michigan State, can Sparty get a little love? Can they play some defense? 150, Wisconsin, good grief. Wisconsin used to always be in the running, in the mix, and make a bowl game. 200-1 to win the Big Ten. That much of an underdog, just incredible to see that. But we know what type of top dogs are in this conference, the best of the best, as we've seen multiple national championships over these past 2 seasons. Now, let's talk about Penn State. Penn State has probably the most hype I've ever seen behind a Penn State team ever in my lifetime. Right here, right now. Is it real? Should we be buying it? Are they improved off of last year? Is Drew Aller enough? Your overview of the Nittany Lions at this point in time is what?
The most pressure, I think, of any team in the Big Ten is definitely on Penn State. I said this last year. I remember going into that Ohio State game. I was like, if they're not going to win this Ohio State game, are they ever going to do it? Are they ever going to be able to get over the top, and they wound up losing that game. As we know, they wound up losing the Big Ten title game to Oregon, but then they make the run to the semis. And I think that was a good kind of momentum builder into this year, which has been looked at since Drew Aller got on campus, since Nick Singleton got on campus, since Katron Allen got on campus. This was looked at as the year where they make that run, they make that push. They were hoping to have Abdul Carter still in the mix. Obviously, he goes top 5 in the NFL draft to the Giants, but big picture wise, Penn State is a mirror image kind of what Ohio State and Michigan were the past few years. Fell short the year before, and thankfully for the NIL, they're able to retain some of these players, bring some of these key guys back, and Drew Aller's back in the mix for his 3rd year as a starter, the best running back duo in the country. They go out and get a bunch of receivers in the portal. They finally should have some playmakers on the outside, and as we know, under James Franklin, he's always had great defenses at Penn State, and they go out and bring in the best defensive coordinator arguably in the country, and Jim Knowles from Ohio State, and they have one of the best OCs in the country, in Andy Kolomnicki. So there's no excuses for Penn State this year when you look at their schedule too. I think it's a very manageable schedule. Their 2 toughest games: Oregon, they host, which will be the whiteout game, and then they go to Ohio State. You split those, you go 11-1, you're most likely in the Big Ten title game, and probably in the mix for the number 1 overall seed, I would think, come college football playoff time.
Yeah, but this is a team 0-7 versus Ohio State and Michigan the last 3 years. I know you just pointed out who's on the schedule, and that's about as important as it gets with no Michigan, but just an Ohio State matchup as it was last year, I believe. But bottom line is, that's where everybody stalls out with the expectations when it comes to Penn State. It's like, yeah, I've seen Penn State be good before, but show me when they actually do beat Ohio State and Michigan. And eventually, though, they will have to match up against one of those 2 teams in the playoffs if they want to get to the promised land. And that's really what we're discussing here. Although, like I said, from the expectation with the conference championship, I mean, Ohio State plus 195, Penn State plus 250 conference championship game winner in that manner. So, again, that that's kind of, difficult to break down because who knows what people will be saying once we get around that mark and whether or not the championship game means anything and people will be playing. So who knows? Good luck on wagering on that one. But from the national championship perspective, let's pull that up right now as far as DraftKings is concerned. Ohio State 5-1 to win it all. Penn State plus 750. In between them is Texas and Georgia. Would you have Ohio State in front of Penn State? Would you have Texas in front of Penn State? Would you have Georgia in front of Penn State right now?
I think if you made me do a top 25 poll, I'm probably putting. I think I would put Texas at number one, and I would probably have Penn State at number two. And I think that's the first time, at least in my lifetime, that I could say that going into the year, Penn State is one of, if not the best team in the country on paper, which is pretty remarkable. Ohio State's loaded. Obviously, they get Jeremiah Smith back as well, but they're ushering in a new quarterback, Julian Say, and it sounds like is going to be the guy there. But we haven't seen him. He's thrown a handful of passes in his career. So when you look at Penn State, and the reason I think so many people are on them is just the experience and what they bring back. Having Aller there for his third year as a full-time starter, that's rare. In today's college football, you might have a third-year starter, but he might have already transferred. Like you look at Will Howard last year and what he did at Kansas State, but then he transfers to Ohio State. It's a little bit of a different thing. Having Drew Aller there, having the OC back for his second year, all the continuity is there on the table for this Penn State team, and no excuses. I think James Franklin would admit it as well. He's a little weird in the press conferences. I think he gets defensive, but he would say this is the best team that he's had, and when you have the best team that you have, expectation should be national title. I think I'm not going to say if they don't win the Big Ten and the national title, the season's a bust, but I think they need to at least get the Big Ten title and then make another run in the college football playoff to at least the semis and maybe even the championship for it to be considered a successful season in my eyes.
All the preseason Big Ten teams, no matter the magazine, it's loaded with Penn State players. Mm-hmm. Of course, Singleton, Penn State, our running back. You mentioned Drew Aller, great beef up front as always on both sides of the ball. Lots of veterans returning, and as I pointed out, the last two national champions came out of the Big Ten. You look at the schedule again, and that's the focal point for me. Nevada, FIU, Nova, that's 3-0. Bye week, Oregon, whiteout at home. They should win that game. Easier said than done at this point in time, no doubt about it. At UCLA, Northwestern. Like, even nobody's bigger on UCLA than me because of Nico, but I'm not going to say that they're going to slip up and lose there. That's 6 straight. That's 6-0. Then they go on the road at Iowa. That's October 18th. Let's just say that they get that job done. Iowa, good season, but I don't think they're going to be on the same level as Penn State. Might be a little bit more difficult. Could be one of those slip-up games. They have the bye then at Ohio State. So the bye right in between those two, the bye before the Ohio State game is perfect for them. A little bit less of a look ahead at that point in time. And then they close up shop with Indiana, Michigan State, Nebraska, Rutgers. Dude, this is just a slam dunk opportunity for James Franklin and Penn State. Again, I've said it multiple times in the last month because people have asked me. If it's not this year, I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, it's one of those scenarios too where it's like, I don't think he would get fired, but it is one of the situations where I could see him like, maybe it's just time to kind of like Brian Kelly at Notre Dame going to LSU. One of those situations like, all right, maybe let's try and go somewhere else because eventually you're going to have to get over that hump. And I still think, going to Ohio State, that's a tough one. Or people are still going to be complaining, even if they go 11-1, saying, well, they still didn't beat Ohio State. They would most likely get a chance at them again in the Big Ten title game or even in the playoff potentially. But, it definitely is put up or shut up time up there in Happy Valley.
No doubt about that. All right, let's get on over to Ohio State. Is this the year that Ryan Day beats Michigan? Final game of the season, November 29th at the Big House. This game is on the road. Portnoy with the big noon kickoff, live, yelling. Is this the year that Ryan Day finally gets Michigan?
I think so. Last year, I don't know what their idea was in that game. Michigan was so incompetent on the offensive side of the ball last year. Ohio State could have gone out there, thrown the ball around the yard 45, 50 times and beat them. But instead, they tried to basically play Michigan and beat them at their own game. And that was the only way that Michigan was going to win that game. And Ohio State in that situation, basically pissed down their leg. And that was that. I think it's a little bit overblown. Like Michigan's won the last 4, but before that, I think Ohio State won the previous 8. This if Michigan gets this one again, make it 5 years in a row, then there's some serious noise. If there isn't already.
I'm going to push back on that. I don't think this is overblown at all. If he did not win the national championship, he's getting fired. And then he wins the national championship, he gets a contract extension. Dude,
I don't know if he was getting fired.
I just, the things I hear on the college football the Sirius channel, who the hell is it? I'm drawing a blank. He's a Michigan guy, or he's an Ohio State guy. Like, it is insane, the things that they say and the way they talk about this rivalry. Like, this is not overblown. This is it. This is the game, and he can't win it. He can't beat them.
He has beat them at least once, though, right?
I thought he was 0-4 with them. Was he just lost 4 straight?
He's lost 4 straight. I think I forget what year he took over.
Yeah, he took over. This is the 8th year. Okay.
Yeah, he took over in 2019. So they've lost the last 4. But like I said, before that, they won the previous 8. And you look even further back, I think they'd won like 13 of the past 15, but before these last 4. So I'm with you. I think it's just a little bit of a. I guess we don't know because we're not alums, we're not fans of this team, but it just seems crazy to me that all this guy does pretty much is win, and he's lost to Michigan, which is a big deal there for sure. But all he's done is win. But you can make the argument you put anyone into Ohio State, they're going to win as well. So
they were favored by 19 in last year's game.
I think it opened at 21.
That's insane, and ended up losing 13-10. Was that the final score in that game? Good grief. I don't even remember. 30-24 the previous week or previous season. They were 3-point dogs in that one. They were 8-point favorites in the 22 season. They ended up losing 45-23. And then 2021, they were 7-point favorites and they lost 42-27. I love it. Look, these are the things that I'm going to hold on to as college football continues to change, professional sports continues to evolve, and we lose these little things like rivalries. They still matter to everybody up there, of course, between those two programs, the alums, everything in the university alike. For me, these are the things that I'm going to hold on to. So I love it. And I thought it was a pretty cool deal to see Ohio State go on the run after they ended up losing that game and get the job done. So let's bring it to this year's team. Enough of the Michigan conversation. We'll talk about them in just a second. But when you talk about Ohio State, they were dominant. They hit the gas pedal against Tennessee and never looked back. And it all started with Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith, my Heisman Trophy candidate. First of all, your thoughts on Jeremiah Smith winning the award at the end of the season?
I think it's a quarterback award this year. I think when you just look at the quarterbacks in college football this year, there's 10 to 15 different players that wouldn't surprise me if they won. I think there's just going to be too many good quarterbacks. And as we've seen historically, last year was a bit of an outlier with Travis Hunter. But before that, you have to kind of go back to Devontae. Like if Travis Hunter doesn't exist last year, Ashton Genty's probably winning it. But I just think the quarterback play is going to be too good this year for it not to go to a quarterback. But he's a freak. He would be the number 1 receiver off the board if he was able to get drafted this year, this past draft, this upcoming draft. But you get at least 2 more years of him. Very exciting player and should only get better in year 2. He also might just not have the most gaudy numbers just because of all the receivers that they have. And you have to remember too, a young quarterback, it could be rocky at times there, but they're going to find a way to get the ball in his hands as much as possible.
Julian Sayin is your starting quarterback for Ohio State. Take me through what's your overview of him.
5-star kid out of California. Last 5-star kid they had there was CJ Stroud. That worked out pretty well, but he's only played in a handful of games, handful of snaps. I'm not going to say I've sat back and watched him in his high school tape, but expectations are high, and basically any quarterback that's gone into this Ryan Day system at Ohio State has had success. You look at Will Howard last year, took him a little bit, and as you said, they beat up on Tennessee and it kind of was off to the races from there. But Will Howard played his best down the stretch. Julian Sayin has had a whole year now in the system, being able to learn, being ready to go. But, that's a lot of pressure being thrown out there at Ohio State. We saw Kyle McCord, his 1 year as the starting quarterback was a bit of a up and down season. And then you see year 2 when he's starting at Syracuse, how awesome he is. I'm a little bit down on Ohio State, just big picture wise, just because of his inexperience and the kind of other quarterbacks in the national title contention, whether it's a Cade Klubnik at Clemson, a Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, Drew Aller at Penn State. So many more of these guys have so much more experience than Say. And so I'm a little bit worried about the quarterback spot for this season. Going forward, they should be fine with him.
Big noon kickoff on August 30th, Texas and Ohio State. Ohio State 3-point favorites, 50.5 in their total in that one. I think we hit on this pretty good in the SEC preview. Let's bring it back, though, for the people that might have missed that. Yeah, whoever loses this game, the world's going to come to an end. Fire everybody, seasons in the dumpster, all of that. But we know that that's not going to be the case. Again, 2 very good programs, but somebody's going to come up small here. If I made you make a play right here, right now, who you taking?
In the Labor Day game between Ohio State and Texas?
Correct.
And that's Ohio State's a 3-point favorite?
Correct. At home.
I think I'm going Texas, plus the 3. I could certainly see that game coming down to who has the ball last, but I'm going to go with the experience. I think Texas is a little bit more experienced. I know Arch is still raw. I haven't only played a few games, but that's a big time spot to walk into for Julian Sayin in his first game. They do get the benefit of the doubt of being at home. But I think I'm just a little bit higher on Texas. I have been saying, pump the brakes on the Arch hype a little bit just because I think he's too overhyped, but I still think he's going to be damn good. And I think Texas is actually going to walk into the shoe and win that game. But I'll definitely take the +3, at this time.
All right, over to the Ducks. Let's go. Dan Lanning, hell of a coach, hell of a recruiter. Got a great program going on right now. I guess the big starting point for Oregon will be without Dylan Gabriel, who came in and played the position really well. So talk to me a little bit about Dante Moore, who's now the starting quarterback, as according to Phil Steele's magazine here, who'll be taking over the position for the Ducks. And, of course, in that offense, the expectations are through the roof. They're going to continue to sling it. Your thoughts on the quarterback who taken over Dylan Gabriel, who played really well and ultimately got drafted a hell of a lot higher than anybody else thought he would?
Yeah. Dante Moore, another former highly ranked recruit. He goes to UCLA at a high school. He's from Michigan too. So it was kind of weird for that connection to even happen. A 5-star recruit going from Michigan all the way out to the West Coast to play for Chip Kelly. But he does that 1 year there. Chip leaves and then he transfers to Oregon. Basically, it's known that he will be the backup behind Dylan Gabriel. And then this year he'll take over. So he's another player that has had some experience at the college level. He didn't start all the games at UCLA, but he did play in probably 9 or 10 of them, I think it was. But UCLA was kind of rotating the quarterbacks. But he looked pretty good in spurts. I was really high on him coming out, and he should be able to kind of slide in this system. This Oregon system has now shown back-to-back years. Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, they put these players in the position to have success. And I do think they got some pretty easy games off the bat. Montana State, Oklahoma State, at Northwestern, and versus Oregon State. So 4 games there, I think, to kind of get your feet under you. I'm not expecting much out of Oklahoma State and Northwestern. And then they got the big test going to Penn State for the whiteout game before they kind of get into the mix. But you look at Oregon's schedule, it's another one very doable. Like at Penn State is probably the only game that they'll be an underdog this season. They host Indiana. They host Wisconsin. At Iowa, they should be favored. At Washington, they should be favored. They host USC. So pretty easy schedule. They avoid Ohio State and Michigan. All they have to do is play Penn State as their toughest test there in the Big Ten. You look at Oregon, I think we're looking at a 11-1 season, most likely here. Sitting here today, maybe 10-2, but Dante Moore, a little bit more experience than a guy like Julian Sayin. I might give Oregon even kind of the benefit of the doubt in the nod over Ohio State at this moment as well.
As far as losses, who else are we talking about from Oregon last year? Because I think you said that a little earlier. You're like, man, they're down a few players from what last year was. Again, this is a team that went 9-0 in conference last year, 13-1. Dan Lanning's 4th season with the Ducks. Hell of a recruiter, has that program on the run or on the rise continuously year after year, it seems. And then only 39 years old. Dude is just an absolute stud of a coach. That's definitely a guy that I would love to play for if I was in college football. But other key losses, are they missing wide receivers? Anything big on the running back position that caught your attention?
10 guys got drafted from this Oregon team last year, and that was the best team throughout the season. And then Ohio
true.
State just absolutely obliterates them in the Rose Bowl. But Derek Harmon was a first-round pick. Josh Connerly, I believe, was a first-round pick. Harmon was defensive lineman. Connerly was one of the best offensive tackles in the country. Tez Johnson, their big-time playmaker at receiver. But they do got some guys back. I forget his name's escaping me right now. But their projected top receiver for this year actually got hurt during like off-season training and not sure when he's going to be back. So that is a bit of a blow to that Oregon offense. But it is a team that did lose a lot from last year. 10 players getting drafted is pretty wild. But as you touched on with Dan Lanning, he's been, having some of the top recruiting classes over these past few seasons. They've got a whole bunch of 4 and 5 stars, kind of ready to roll and go into this new spot. So I don't think the Oregon success is going to be slowing down anytime soon. But Dante Moore, a lot of pressure on him. He's kind of been given the keys to this team. Kind of took an understudy role last year, but now it's time to roll for him.
Yeah, they were the best team throughout the course of the season last year. You're right to bring that up. And then just lost it completely going up against a more talented team in Ohio State at the Rose Bowl. Again, just looking at the ATS here last year, they just rolled. They scored a bunch of points, of course, is the way you would always think about an Oregon offense, but 49 against Washington, 45 against Penn State, 39 against Maryland, 38 against Michigan, 38 Illinois, 35. This is all back to – look at this. Every game last year, they scored two games out of the 14 played, they scored under 30 points. They scored 24 against Idaho in the game one. I remember watching that. Wow. I had Idaho in that one. That's right. They were 45-point favorites in that one, did not cover the spread. And then in 16-13 win over Wisconsin, where they were 13-point favorites. So this is a team that hits the ground running. The expectations are through the roof for again, but losing Dylan Gabriel onto another quarterback, Bo Nix, I think, to Gabriel, if I'm not mistaken. So the expectations are going to be there for this new kid to come in, Dante Moore. All eyes on him. All right, let's talk about Michigan here. Bounce back season, just kind of all over the place last year. 8-5, Moore takes over off the national championship year, the cheating scandal that carried through. All that's got to go away. Now it's, hey, look, they ended the season on a high note. I forget what they did in the bowl game, but they
beat them.
Oh, that's right. But they beat Ohio State at the end of the regular season. That's a feather in their cap. Take that into the offseason, build off of that. 8-5, as I said. What are we talking about with Bryce Underwood at the quarterback position? Is this the kid that Portnoy spent all that money to bring in?
Yep. Yeah. Number 1 recruit in the country at the quarterback spot. I did a deep dive on Michigan today. The stat that floored me, and I had to double, triple check it. We know how bad that passing attack was last year. They were the worst passing team yards per game wise. That's not one of the service academies. So not an Army, not a Navy, not an Air Force. Michigan was 129th, I think it was, in the country in passing yards per game. Only threw for 129.7 yards per game, I believe it was. Just an abomination of a thing. But to be able to do that, to be so one-dimensional on offense and still find your way to an 8-5 record, I think was pretty impressive. That team, like you said, there was so much going on last year, so many draft picks, all five offensive linemen from the national championship team, J.J. McCarthy, their top running back, 3 of their top 4 receivers, all to the draft. So all these guys are gone. You're bringing in a new coach, as you said, with the scandal, the allegations, and everything. A lot of noise around that program, and to still be able to get them to an 8-5 record and beat Ohio State at the end of the season, beat Alabama in the bowl game. I think certainly heading in the right direction. But now you're ushering in a new quarterback here in Bryce Underwood, and obviously it's going to be better than it was last year. Anything was, but that's a tough spot to walk into from day one and be the guy. He's getting paid a lot of money, so he better be the guy from day one. But you gotta think that passing attack's going to improve. I got Michigan going 8-4. I think Vegas has their over under at 8.5, and it's juiced to the over actually. So I probably lean under right now, but it's a situation where if Bryce Underwood is better than expected, that team can certainly win 10 games because that defense is going to be legit. Just how good can this offense be? It remains to be seen, but I got them going 8-4, a couple swing games in there that could change that. But I think it's going to be, relatively similar season to last year. And next year is kind of where they really take off with Underwood in year 2.
Yeah, look, you're talking about some swing games there, potential losses more than anything is what's jumping off the page at me. More, like I said, with you at on the road at USC. USC is coming off a bye in that one. Oklahoma week 2. That's at
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma. Look, I think people are down in Oklahoma. Some are a little bit higher than others this year. That's a tough game for Michigan to go down there and
Yep.
win. Nebraska, that's September 20th. That's on the road at Nebraska. So these are some games, like you said, are swing games, but potentially could go against them. And if that's the case, that could be an ugly season staring at them. But again, they close up shop with Ohio State at the end of the season. Bryce Underwood, the real deal, possibly Heisman Trophy candidate. Where are we at with him?
I was actually listening to something today. A true freshman has never won the Heisman, so take that what you will. But I just don't think that there's enough talent at the receiver spots and at tight end. They lose Colson Loveland as well. He's going to have to make, the players around him better. I think they're really good in the backfield. They got Justice Haynes, transfer from Alabama. The offensive line is going to be better. The defense is going to be legit. I just don't think he's going to be asked to throw the ball that much. I think we could definitely look and see very similar numbers to what Dylan Raiola did in year 1 at Nebraska. But the one thing I will say about this Michigan schedule, it's tough kind of at the beginning and the middle there, but the end of the season, they end with arguably the 4 worst teams in the Big Ten before the Ohio State game. They go to Michigan State, they host Purdue, they go to Northwestern, they go to Maryland. You should easily be, riding a 4-game winning streak inside Ohio State game, and you're hosting Ohio State. And as we know, Ohio State is a little bit, scared now, it seems, of Michigan. They're a little bit nervous. They play a little tight when they're playing them, it seems like recently. So they could easily be riding a 4-game winning streak into that game with all the momentum and the potential to take down Ohio State. So I would just say watch out for Michigan as the season goes along with the young quarterback as well, continuing to get experience and get better. Their best football could be towards the end of the season, kind of just like it was last year.
Yeah, Underwood's not even listed right now on DraftKings Sportsbook for the award. So take that with what you will on that one. Josh Hoover is our last one at 300-1 out of TCU. So, yeah, you can get a little sprinkle on Bryce Underwood to win the Heisman and potentially put a kid through college if he does cash that in. But good luck on that one. All right. I want to talk about USC. We'll come over to Illinois in a second, but I want to talk about USC because we talk about expectations a lot. And Lincoln Riley, when he got hired, I thought it was a slam dunk. He was going to win multiple national champions. He's going to be recruiting the best of the best. His offense is the top notch. Nobody knows more in college football as far as offense is concerned than Lincoln Riley. Hasn't been the case. Last year, 7-6, and he's on the hot seat, correct?
I don't believe so, just because of his buyout. I think I heard his buyout is like around $80 million. So if he gets fired, so.
Yeah, you're right. Cal Hurd was saying that too as well. But crazier things have happened. But it is a different world with the NIL. You can't be wasting money on that. I believe in Lincoln Riley, and I do think, you know what? If there was a team that I would take a flyer on, and again, throwing something completely up against the wall here, not named Oregon, not named Penn State, not named Ohio State, I would always look at the Trojans because you do know what type of firepower they're going to have at all the skill positions. You do know what type of kids are playing in California, some of the best in the country when it comes to high school being recruited. Lincoln Riley, as we pointed out. But tell me a little bit about the quarterback here, Jaden Mavia Jr. Where are we at with him? The expectations for the Trojans this year. They open up with Missouri State, Georgia Southern, then they're at Purdue, then they got Michigan State. That should be 4-0, Beef. They should be 4-0 on the road at Illinois. No ifs, ands, buts about it.
Yeah, the quarterback Mayava, so he transferred in last season from UNLV. He was the starting quarterback at UNLV, and it was a bit of a head scratcher, like why he was doing it. But Miller Moss gets benched towards the end of the season, and Mayava takes over, and he's the guy. So another player, very experienced. He's played a lot of football. Expect him to have a good year. Lincoln Riley quarterbacks, it seems to usually work out. And I'm with you too. I'm a big Lincoln Riley fan. What he did at Oklahoma, we talked about it the other day. They were winning, 10, 11 games every single season. But that was the expectation when he came to USC. And I think he would be the first one to admit that he hasn't, lived up to his own expectations thus far. It's a bit of a weird situation. It was one of the reasons why I was against Oklahoma last year. That transition from a different conference, you have to learn how to play, a new style ball. Big 12, that Oklahoma team was, all finesse type of guys. That we know there's not much defense in that country. To transfer over into the SEC, you're going to need to add some guys on the line of scrimmage, add some beef up front. Same thing with USC going from the Pac-12 and the finesse of that to the Big Ten. I think they were caught off guard a little bit last year, and I thought, it would be a rough year one, and it was for them. But I'm with you. They should start out 4-0. But that's a tough schedule, Sean. There's no real cupcakes on that game, I think, after those first four. At Illinois, that's going to be a tough one. There'll be a dog in that one. Host Michigan. We talked about a little bit of an unknown. At Notre Dame, at Nebraska, and they host Iowa, and they go to Oregon. There's a lot of tough games on that schedule. DraftKings Sportsbook, I think, agrees with me in that regard, too. Their over-under is only set at 7.5. I think if they win 8 games this year, that's going to be considered a disappointment. USC with Lincoln Riley, the expectation should be 9-10 wins. We should be competing for a Big Ten championship, and if not, that's a failure. But as we said, the buyout's large. I don't think that unless they don't go to a bowl game or something, I think that's the only way that he would get fired. But that's a tough schedule that USC has compared to some of these other Big Ten schedules that we've seen.
All right. How dare I skip over Indiana like I have been all conversation long here? After what they did last year, 11-2, and of course, Signetti is the captain of the ship, has everybody believing all last year. What a season it was! But I don't know if I should be buying. Where are we at with the Hoosiers right here, right now, as far as your outlook for this upcoming season?
Cupcake games for the non-con for them, and I don't know if you saw this the other day as well. Like they had a series over the next few years with like Virginia, and they bought Virginia out of that, and basically are just going. I think Signetti's kind of strategy is let's beat these non-conference teams, basically treat it as preseason, and then get ready for the Big Ten. And they do that every year. They should be in the mix for 9-10 wins. And we saw last year they didn't get punished for the weak schedule, and they still made the playoffs. But, start out Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. You start out 3-0 there for sure. They do go to Oregon. They go to Iowa, and they go to Penn State. So 3 really tough games where they'll probably all be underdogs. They host Illinois. I think that's kind of, the swing game for their season. But you look at Signetti, he said it last year, Google me, I win. So give me a reason to doubt this guy. They bring in a quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. He comes in from Cal. He's getting some potential first-round buzz. And I was listening to something like about a month ago, just basically about Indiana. You look at Signetti and his track record from where he brings in his quarterbacks, like basically they've all been transfers, or when they went from James Madison from FCS to FBS, they had the player of the year at the quarterback spot. Last year, Curtis Rourke, transfers in from Ohio, has one of the best seasons of any quarterback in the country, takes that team all the way to the playoffs. You should be buying stock in Fernando Mendoza and the numbers that he's going to be putting up this year. I'd be interested to see what number he's at the Heisman, because he's getting some legit NFL buzz. I was hearing Tom McShay talking him up the other day. So that's a name that everyone should have bookmarked as we head into this season. And he could be one of the breakout players in the country.
Pretty good wide receiver core they have too as well with the Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Signetti's been a heck of a coach everywhere he's been. Now, don't get me wrong, James Madison, Elon IUP versus the competition that he'll be going up against, but he proved himself last year. So, doubting is fine, but, that's got to come to a little bit of a halt after what he showed. But you pointed out they open up Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, Illinois. That's the tough one. Iowa. Man, Iowa could play the role of spoiler. There's one team that's consistent on a lot of these schedules. It's Iowa. If they turn out to be a good team this year, like you did bring up, watch out. Oregon on the road, Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, Penn State, Wisconsin. They're going to Penn State. That's an interesting game on November 8th. Wisconsin, and then finally closing up shop at Purdue. Really intriguing. And again, shame on me for not bringing them up a little earlier in the conversation due to the fact of the season that they had last year. But there's so many teams that have your attention. Look, it's a 2-conference race as usual. Maybe not as usual, but, in the last year or so. And I think we're all coming to the realization that that's how it's going to be with the SEC and the Big Ten. And there's just a lot of good teams, and who's going to get through the gauntlet healthy. And, of course, with just tallying up wins, that's all that matters. We'll see if the voters change things up. But all in all, as long as your win column is perfect, I don't think they can say much to you. We'll see what happens with that one. All right, over to Illinois. And as I pointed out, Bielema ended up the season 4 straight victories. Had a lot of people believing, and even won their bowl game. Who did they play in their bowl game, Beef?
South Carolina.
South Carolina, correct, yes. As far as Illinois this year, Luke Altmaier, senior at the quarterback position. Was he a transfer for Ole Miss? Is that where he was from?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah, he didn't do much last year with Jackson Dart, correct?
No, he transferred in. He was Ole Miss's he was Illinois' quarterback last season.
Okay, so
So he
he's still there.
from Ole Miss 2 years
Is there
ago.
any expectation at all for you for Illinois, or is it just going to be, you know what, middle of the road season? 10-3 is a little bit better than middle of the road. They open up with Western Illinois. They travel to Duke. They got Western Michigan, Indiana, USC, at Purdue. They got Ohio State at home, at Washington, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern. A very manageable schedule as well here.
Yeah, Illinois is a team that people are pegging as this year's Indiana, basically. A team that is going to surprise some people. Some casuals, I guess, would probably be more so surprised. Like if you're kind of dialed in on the college football scene, I think a lot of people know that Illinois does return a lot, but just like Indiana last year is basically like, what the hell? Like Indiana is undefeated, number 5 in the country, whatever. Like I think Illinois has that kind of potential this year to surprise some people. They start out with Western Illinois, and Western Michigan has 2 of their 3 non-cons, so you can go 2-0 there most likely. At Duke, that's a tough one. Duke's been solid program over these last few years. But then their Big Ten schedule is pretty doable, I think. At Indiana, I think, like I said about the Indiana schedule, that's kind of a swing game there. But the rest of the way, they host Ohio State. But the rest of the way, I think that they actually might be favored in the rest of their games, besides that Ohio State game. But I don't want to fall into the trap of this year that I did with Oklahoma State last year. Illinois, basically on paper, is kind of like the same. Really experienced quarterback, so many returning offensive linemen, like one of the most teams with the most returning production at any team in the country. And Oklahoma State just fell flat on their face last year, had a historically bad season. Illinois reminds me a lot of them, but I'm expecting Illinois to have a bit of a better year than what that 3-9 Oklahoma State team looked like last year.
All right. As I said, big conference, a lot to discuss. Nebraska and, the quarterback that they have coming back, Royal, is going to be pretty damn good. Matt Rule's a hell of a recruiter. Last year, disappointing to say that, it's fair to say 7-6. They did open up. Weren't they like 5-0 last year?
Yeah, I think so. At least 4-0. And then they had it's a Friday night game at home. They were starting to really get the buzz going, and I think it was actually Illinois. And Illinois goes to Nebraska and beats them for like the first time in a night game. And they were like undefeated in their history on Friday nights or something. I remember betting.
Went to overtime. Yeah, they lost 31-24. They were 7-point favorites in that one.
Yep.
So they opened up 3-0 last year. They beat UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa, and ended up losing to Illinois in that one. All right. We did jab at Iowa a little earlier. PJ Fleck still rowing the boat in Minnesota, 8-5 last season. Anything there for you?
Just got an extension the other day as well, I think, through I believe through 2030. I think they're kind of
coach. He's a good coach, man. He's a good coach.
I just think they're kind of, they are what they are. They're going to win 7-8 games, maybe, surprise and knock someone off. But I think they're kind of, they are what they are. I'm not staying up at night thinking about Minnesota football.
Anything for Washington to get back. And of course, we know, DeBoer was the reason. Penix was a hell of a quarterback, but they had some things going at a lot of those positions, skill positions. Anything there for Washington's perspective this year?
Damon Williams, quarterback. Remember the name. He's going to be, if Washington wins, in the Heisman discussion, I think.
Really?
He's a guy that, if you want to throw some coffee money on a player to win the Heisman, Damon Williams is a guy. Look at what he did kind of down the stretch last year, and look at what Jed Fish has done with quarterbacks in his career. You look at Noah Favita from Arizona 2 years ago. He was in the Heisman discussion. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Jed Fish leaves. Favita stays at Arizona, and Favita completely falls off the map and was an unknown basically last year in college football. Look at Damon Williams. This will be his second year at Washington. He was starting some games down the stretch last year, and they were playing well when he was in there in the shotgun. So Damon Williams, remember the name.
UCLA, how many wins this year?
don't have the schedule in front of me off the top of my head. What's Vegas saying? What's theirs? Let's look it up on
Well, let's start
DraftKings.
with this. They open up with
5.5
Utah at home. How many?
loss. 5.5.
Okay. Utah at home at UNLV.
Probably would pick UNLV.
New Mexico at home.
I'll give them a win there.
Northwestern on the road.
Probably one of those games like Northwestern's going to have to win a couple Big Ten games probably. So I'll probably go Northwestern actually.
Penn State at home.
Penn State.
Michigan State on the road.
Michigan State.
Maryland at home.
I'll give them a win there.
At Indiana.
Loss.
Nebraska at home.
Loss.
At Ohio State.
Loss.
Washington at home.
Loss.
At USC to close up shop.
Loss.
They went 5-7 last year. I think you got them worse this year.
Yeah, I think I had 3-9.
Nico is going to be a top 5 quarterback selection. Top 5 quarterback selection next year's NFL draft. Mark the tape. Don't even doubt it.
Yeah, all right.
Anything there for Maryland for Sam Ostry and his Terps?
I couldn't tell you one thing. I was talking about Kentucky earlier. I was like, who the hell's Kentucky's quarterback? I could not tell you right now who Maryland's quarterback is.
Malik Washington. He's a freshman.
Okay. Well, I will say the one thing. Loxley is a pretty good recruiter, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. But just like with all these other teams, like when you look at Bryce Underwood, he's got so much more around him, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where it's like he's not going to be asked to do everything for that team to win them games. Maryland, they're not the most talented bunch, so there's going to be a lot of pressure on that kid from day one. But yeah, Maryland football, thumbs down.
Crab cakes and thumbs down football for the season. All right, we'll get you out of here on this one. Who's winning the Big Ten this year?
Sitting here July 20th, you make me pick the Big Ten winner. I'll fall into the trap and say Penn State. Just buying in on the returning production, the Aller hopefully taking a leap this year. And like you said, if not now, when? They remind me so much of just what Michigan and Ohio State did, as I said at the beginning, over these past 2 years, being able to kind of bring these guys back for one last dance. Give me Penn State there at plus 250. I'm not buying in on Ohio State with a first-year starting quarterback.
They get both Oregon and Indiana at home. Do not play Michigan. Travel to Ohio State. Man, sky's the limit for Penn State. Last thing, will the national champion come out of the Big Ten this year?
I'll say it goes back to the SEC this year. I don't have my official pick yet, but if you made me pick someone today, I'm probably going either Texas or Georgia.
All right, Ryan Beef Coyle. Make sure you just follow him on all things socials. Ryan Coyle 35. Subscribe over at Beef Up Front. Great podcast. And if you missed anything, we got one in the books already over the SEC preview. Everything can be found at foxphlgambler.com. We'll get back at it. Talk a little ACC. We'll mix it all up. A lot to discuss. College football right around the corner. Let's go.